Yes, thank you, Alan, and morning everyone, and thank you to everyone in the Fife Food Summit team for inviting Edinburgh to join you today. It's not something you can say quickly, edible Edinburgh. So I think I'm going to move straight into talking about, Alan, next slide. Alan is my assistant, able assistant here. I think I'm just going to get straight into the context of Edible Edinburgh. We have been on the go since 2013, but lots has happened in that period of time, not least becoming a bronze accredited sustainable food place. So this is just a wee bit of the background. I don't want to spend a long time on the background and where we've been, but really probably take us through a bit of a journey of where we think we're going and what's important at the moment to be focusing on. But it is a good pivotal point that the Sustainable Food City Plan, which just ran out in 2020, was a 6-year plan from 2014, and took us through those themes to ensure that we put food very much on the agenda, and we brought the partners together. I think that that's the very important part, and Hannah-Laurie also explored this in her earlier presentation. It's about how we get people around the table who have influence, but also who have those connections and who can start that dialogue. I just want to fill you in a little bit more context also. We know how challenging the past year has been, and I wanted to put one of the figures out there. Our allotment waiting list in Edinburgh, which is one of our notorious benchmarks of interest in growing, increased by 2,000 in the past year, up to 4,285. So people can grow quite old on our waiting list over 5 years, trying to get that bit of green space that they covet. That we need to be a lot more innovative about how we tackle some of these challenges and address those expectations. But I think just a final word on partners before I get Alan to move on. I mentioned Chamber of Commerce, local businesses. Some of them are social enterprises involved in looking at how they have a green and sustainable business. But importantly, we also have our universities, with 4 universities, but specifically Edinburgh University, and we have our college involved. Some of the early activity, fairly similar to many of our areas and regions. We've a fruit stall, a local hospital, growing events, sharing of good practice. And also, as anyone who's visited the website, we have a business charter and we have an individual charter and sign up and campaign to action. But if I can move us on, I'll touch on our achievements. And I'm focusing on sustainable food cities. The programme has now moved to sustainable food places. But one of our more recent achievements has been developing a programme of business breakfast and business engagement. We had a large call to action with the launch of the charter in November 2019. In the EICC, if anyone was at in Edinburgh, sponsored by 2 or 3 of the food distributors who are major suppliers in the area. One of the things that an iterative changes from moving on from those 6 themes, we've now developed a tighter focus from our secretariat with 3 structured working groups: health, economy and sustainability. And one of the key tasks for the partnership is how we engage in the dialogue around a new city food plan, and thoughts that this would be a 10-year plan. We want to have some big ambitions in there. So if we can move on from achievements, outcomes. I don't think any of these would be unexpected. And I know Pete at the opening introduction talked about our food economy and our food culture. I think we'll move on, Alan, because I've got more that I really want to kind of take time over. I've just taken the illustration from our plan, which I think still has a resonance and relevance for our new plan moving forward. But clearly there are still a lot of things to do and issues to overcome. And while we do see some examples of local produce being procured, it's not necessarily on the scale that we provide new sustainable routes to market for food producers. But key there, and key to everyone, as is evident through the pandemic, is how we tackle food poverty, and we do so with dignity, and we work constructively. We work collaboratively with our communities on solutions. We've recently had a poverty commission in Edinburgh, and some of these findings are very pivotal to health, well-being, and our future inclusive growth. But if we can move on, I'm taking us on to, I think really what I would say is that the meat, if I've done the first course, excuse the parallels here, I think this is the meat of the debate that I'd like to introduce today, and happy to talk through in chat, is why do we need food partnerships? Why do we need that structure? Why do we need to be seeking accreditation and recognition for the visions that we seek to, that we're working on? And I think it's exactly as I've kind of outlined there. It's very much to work on ensuring that the priorities are embedded in council, other public body strategic documents, and that we do so in a joined up way. It's a cross-sectoral working for me that's very much needs to be nurtured. We're seeing food businesses across the country struggling to work with the challenges post-COVID and still ongoing challenges, and for them to be looking at sustainable and perhaps greening business options. We've really got to be mindful of the priorities and how best to approach that, and how best to have those dialogues and conversations. But food is at the heart of communities, and my colleagues in Edinburgh Community Food delivered up to 1 million meals last year, and I think it's well worth ensuring that we've got a good shout out to the community champions like Edinburgh Community Food, and you will have obviously similar case studies in Fife. And in doing so, I think that the valuable connections in the community that were achieved during a period of great, unstable time have been ones that we continue to build on. But we need that dialogue on a joined up approach. I'm going to move us on because I think Alan also is helping me keep track of time. I'm not making the case for food partnerships as the only way forward, or badging ourselves with being sustainable food places or cities, but I do think it helps with a bit of that influencing and strategic direction that that areas, cities, towns, regions are able to achieve. They're able to achieve a bit more when they have a strong supporter base, they have a strong infrastructure, and they are supported in developing ambitious goals. It's also a mechanism to secure some support and other resources which are vital. I think in terms of influencing, I think we've all seen how the power of the voice of Marcus Rashford, for example, in reversing political decision-making around food and food issues and the challenges of feeding school children. And I think that approach of looking at who are our ambassadors, who are our strong voices in our communities and our networks. What's in it for business and what's in it for others to get involved in this agenda. Signing a pledge or a charter may be good, but it then has to be backed up with actions that produce some of the outcomes towards a sustainable food system. And I think within this, strategically, we're seeking to achieve this through a recently published food growing strategy and also the Council's carbon neutral 2030 net zero vision. I'm going to move us on to just a sort of checklist of where we are. Food plan, which is about to go to consultation for a new plan, and the ambition for this to be a 10-year plan. I don't think there's time for me to do this now, and I'm not going to ask Alan to do it, but the map is interactive, and I would encourage in the follow-up and looking at the presentation to have a look at the food growing map. I did raise the level of interest for food growing and community food growing does need to be backed up with some resources, and there's a small fighting fund that's been released that we can pull on within the growing strategy, and it's not all about allotments and green spaces, but it is about looking at how we support communities who need some assistance with the planning or the delivery of or the setting up of trusts and community foundations to be able to take some of that community empowerment forward. And on the right there we have our Cultivating Communities strategy, seeking to increase growing spaces. I'm going to move us on to a fairly detailed slide, and I'll make no apologies for this, but I think looking at our themed areas, I'm going to pick out one or two. And I think I mentioned already the work of Edinburgh Community Food, one of our key partners. And together with the council, we're involved delivering a programme called Discover, supporting 300 families over the school holiday period, not just with school meals, but with a themed activity pack. So a blending of community development staff looking at how they can creatively engage with families, with some of the families who would have been signed up for free school meals. That's engaged with 300 families and will continue, and continues with its communication through closed Facebook groups. In land use, one of our most exciting new developments is in Lauriston, and a community lease has been awarded, a 25-year community lease, to a new farm trust, which is seeking to use public land to develop a large-scale farm with growing spaces, with educational opportunities and training opportunities and employability opportunities for citizens. It's in the north of the city, near Lauriston, near the shoreline, and will be a major development over the next 5 years. I think I'm running a bit low on time, so I'm going to move us on, and it's the challenges that we face, I think are, ones common to many of us, and I think it's how strategically we can put some of our resources to the best use within our working groups. And moving on, what I wanted to round up on, next slide, is I do think there is a call to action, whether food partnerships or networks, and how they're positioned, but it does give a voice, and I think it's about how we represent as wide a range of interests in our communities and societies as we can. And we need to start those conversations. We need to start talking about what do we mean by food power, and as Pete mentioned, a good food nation bill. What do we mean? How realistic is it that the current administration will implement their policy on free school meals? Do we need to be looking at junk food advertising ban? How close are we to being able to define ourselves as a veg city? not suggesting that we have to have all these conversations at the same time, but I do think in an accessible way, I think we need to start the conversation. But also, perhaps just to sort of round up, I think we need to be ambitious, and what we're needing to also improve on is how we celebrate success, how we get that call to action, and how we actually engage with individuals who think, this could be better, this could be better. Is this how I want to be buying food, in plastic or non-sustainable ways? Is there an alternative? Is there a way in which we can improve our food system?